Hey guys, welcome back to Magic TV. My name's Craig. It is 12 o'clock on a Sunday, which means it's time for a Q&A. Now, this is where I take all the questions that you've asked over the course of the week, and I try to answer them to the best of my ability. First of all, thank you so much for joining me here on this week's Q&A. I really appreciate it. You know, if you've watched any videos or if you've subscribed or interacted in any way, thank you so much. I'm sorry I'm not actually in my main studio. We are knee deep in December and things are very, very busy for me. I got back from a gig at like 1 o'clock last night. I'm currently filming this at 6 o'clock in the morning, 6:34 in the morning. And that's after filming another video that I've done before this one. And that's literally the only time I've got because I'm going to leave at 9 o'clock to go and do an illusion show down south. So hopefully things will be getting back to normal as I get through the Christmas period. But it's a busy time of the year for me. But I didn't want you guys to not have videos, especially the Q&A, because I know how much people love it. So if you're new to the channel, you've never seen the Q&A before, I'm answering all of your questions. If you've got a question, now more than ever, it's really important that you get it in before the weekend ends on the Monday at the latest. And the reason is I don't know when I'm filming these Q&As at the moment. I'm squeezing them in wherever I can. And so it might be Monday, it might be Thursday, it might be Tuesday, I don't know. But if you want to guarantee to get your question answered, just get it in as soon as possible. If I miss your question, I'm very sorry. I will get back to it the following week. Just leave it down below again, and I'll get back to it the following week. Other than that, you're getting my raw and filtered opinion. I'm not reading these questions beforehand and making notes on the answers. I'm literally giving you an off-the-cuff answer. If I think a question is kind of going to be too complicated to answer or it's going to take up too much time, what I'll do is I'll make a separate video on that, and that'll come out of, you know, at some point in the future, normally after the couple of weeks. Now, with that all being said, we're going to get straight into it. So once again, thank you so much for joining me. And let's get into this week's Q&A. So the first question is from G3000 Media. And they say, "Hi, Craig. My name is Geronimo." Hello, Geronimo. Nice to meet you. I've just started out in Magic and I wanted to ask you something. What's the best way to deal with hecklers when performing a trick? I hate to be performing a routine for a group and have someone try and act like a smart guy or intentionally mess with the effect. How do you handle these situations? What advice would you give beginners to deal with that sort of person effectively? Love your content, and Matt always cracks me up. Matt is great. Greetings from Uruguay. Okay, so first of all, I put a video on this about 3 years ago on Magic TV. So if you search Dealing with Hecklers Magic TV on YouTube, there's a very good chance it'll come up. It is in the archive somewhere. I put up a lot of content, but it's somewhere. But it will show up if you put up Dealing with Hecklers. And that's a much longer video, and that will kind of answer a lot of your questions. But briefly now, the best approach for dealing with a heckler is to get them on side. Now, that's not always the case. I know that's not always the case, and there are people out there that just want to mess with you, and I'll cover that in a second. But by and large, you want to try and get that person on side, because if you can get them on side, then they'll be your biggest advocate. Now, the people that want to mess with you, the people who want to act like a smart guy, like you said, those people normally want to be the center of attention. And they're normally an alpha male. If they're not the center of attention, they're feeling threatened that you've come into their group and people are giving you the attention that they desperately crave. So one way to deal with it is to throw the attention back at them. So do a trick that empowers them, like my trick Empowerment, or something that empowers them where they do the trick. So, for example, you know, I just have somebody pick a card. You know, and palm the card and say to the person, you know, you're gonna find the card, you know, and like do a dual reality thing. So you're showing the alpha male the card. Let them know that they're going to be the star of the show. There's a million different ways that make them look like they're the star of the show, and actually turn around to them and say to them, look, you look like a really smart guy, so I'm going to make you the star of the show. Now, 9 times out of 10, that will work. And I've got a video online somewhere of 10 tricks that makes the spectator the star of the show, so you might want to look into that as well. But a lot of the time, that will deal with it. You don't need to go down the route of heckler stoppers. You don't need to go down the route of how to squash them if you can get them on side. Because if you can get them on side, then that's the best way to deal with it. Now, sometimes that won't work. And the other way to deal with it is just to kind of acknowledge it. I work professionally, and I work at venues sometimes where you do get people like that. And really, how you deal with it is down to your character. It's down to who you are. It's down to how you portray yourself as a performer. And I think that's really important. So the way that I deal with hecklers a lot of the time is that, I will literally just stop and I'll have a conversation with them. And, if they're trying to make me look stupid, I will, I'll kind of just have a conversation with them, and I'll just say, hey, I'm just here trying to entertain people. That's all I'm doing. I'm just trying to have fun with them. I'm sorry if you don't like it. If you want to, I can stop. And what that does is it kind of puts them in a situation where if everybody else is enjoying the magic and you're saying to them, hey, if you want me to stop, a lot of the time the rest of the group will know, please don't, we're really enjoying the magic. That'll happen an awful lot. So, a couple of nights ago, I was performing at a table at a big corporate event. And I walked over to the table, and this guy was a bit of an arsehole from the first second I walked over. And, I introduced myself, and I was doing my magic, and he was making little quips, throughout the first routine. And it got worse and worse and worse. And I just stopped and I said, hey, man, look, I'm just here to entertain people. That's all I am. I'm just here to entertain people. I'm not trying to fool you. I'm not trying to make you look silly. If you're feeling offended, I'm very sorry about that. That's not my intention. My job's just to come around and show you guys magic tricks. If you don't like this, I am more than, I've got a load of tables to go to. I don't need to perform for you guys. And if you don't want me here, that's absolutely not a problem. Just say the word. And everybody else on the table was like, no, stay. I was like, and I just looked at the guy directly and I said, is that okay with you? If you could just let me do my thing for like 5 or 10 minutes, would that be all right? And he shut up at that point. So that's another way to deal with it. Yes, there's going to be times where you have to shut them down if you want to continue performing to that group of people. And there are ways of doing that. And there are ways of stopping that heckler dead in their tracks. I've talked in the past about, I don't think I've got a deck of cards here. Is this a deck of cards? I've talked in the past about one of my favourite, I have, look at that. One of my favourite heckler stopper routines is I show the bottom card of the deck and I do an Erdnase change. So I say, look, I'm going to make this card disappear. And I just do an Erdnase, well, the Erdnase change, this is difficult. I say, look, I've made the card disappear. Thank you very much. And they go, well, hang on, it's in your hand. And I go, what? Sorry, what was that? I can't hear you. Something like that. But you don't have to go down that route if you don't want to. There's no need to go down that route because ultimately, at the end of the day, magic's meant to be fun. It's meant to be enjoyable for the person that's watching it as well. And you have the power to just walk away. That's the most important thing that you understand. If somebody's giving you shit, if somebody's giving you, if you're, look, it's a different thing if you're confrontational. When I perform on stage, I've got a very confrontational attitude. You have to expect heckling at that point and you have to be able to deal with it. But if you're just like a nice guy that's wanting to perform for people and you're not being confrontational at all, you don't need to stand there or sit there and deal with that crap. You can just turn around and you go, look, I was just trying to entertain you. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Catch you later. And just walk off. You don't have to perform for them, right? And that, I've done that in gigs, not many times, probably a handful of times, but it's got to a point in a close-up gig where somebody's just being an arsehole the entire time. And I've just been like, you know what, guys, I really appreciate it. I've got a lot of tables to get to. I'm obviously annoying you, and that's not the goal. I'm not here to stand here and be insulted by you when I'm just trying to entertain people. So I'm going to go to another table now, but I hope you guys have an amazing day. Thank you very much. And I've walked off. And pretty much exclusively every time I've done that, I've had somebody on that table come back and say, look, I'm really sorry for that guy. We'd really like you to come back. We promise he'll behave. And what's happened is they've had a chat with him. So, there's lots of ways of dealing with it. Go watch the video that I did because that's going to help you a little bit. But, the most important thing is you say you're new into magic. experience will shine through. You know, the more you perform, I always say say it on this channel over and over again. Flight time is the key. The more you do something, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. And the more you perform to real people, the better you will be at dealing with hecklers. Okay, so the next question is David Blaine, who says, any word on where to buy O's Pearlman's 21st Century, or whatever it was called? Are you talking about the thing where you cut the paper and it turns into the celebrity? I think that's what it's called, 21st Century Phantom, I think, from memory. He put a DVD out through Penguin years ago. It might still be on Penguin as a download. A lot of O's older stuff is still available on Penguin Magic. I remember that Prop Dog used to do a lot of those gimmicks. They used to sell a lot of the celebrity gimmicks, and they used to sell 21st Century Phantom an awful lot because they sold so many of those. So it might be worth checking on the Prop Dog site. And then it might be worth checking on the Penguin site, because I know a lot of Penguin's original back catalogue have been kind of uploaded as a download. So that might be where you want to start. Beyond that, I'm not too sure. It's not a trick that I really do. I know a lot of people do it. I don't really do it. Okay, so Alejandro Ramiro says, hi, Craig. Hello, by the way. Recently, you mentioned Sarah thought you were going to perform a cheesy trick when you first performed for her. Yeah, she did. Coming across as cheesy is something I'm worried about. My question is, how do you come across as cheesy when offering a trick? I feel cheesy telling the patter. By the way, thanks for the Hows and Whys video about coin boxes. It was thorough. Thanks for everything, mate. You're more than welcome. I'm glad you liked the coin box video. So, yeah, look, there's a misconception amongst the public that magic is cheesy, and sometimes people will think magic and they'll think pulling rabbits out of hat, making silks vanish, stuff like that, and that's obviously, as we know, not the case a lot of the time. So you're asking how to not come across as cheesy when offering a trick. You feel cheesy by telling the patter. So there's a couple of different ways of doing this. The first way is making sure the tricks that you do are most absolutely definitely not cheesy. There's certain things that spectators think of as cheesy when they think of magic. So make sure you keep away from those sort of things. Don't open by pulling a silk handkerchief out of a rabbit's arse, for example, that sort of thing. But the most important thing, you say that you feel cheesy telling the patter, and that's the biggest problem, right? What a lot of magicians do, especially kind of when they've got limited performing experience. And I'm not saying that you have, so please don't get offended, but this is something I've seen an awful lot, is they almost go into performer mode. So when they're sitting around with friends, let's say you're a social performer, how you interact with your friends will be one way. You will act one particular way. And then when you start to perform a trick, it's almost like you go, right, performer mode. And you almost come across as a completely different person, right? And you come across as, I remember seeing a kid a few years ago, got to be the same age as Ryland. And he was a really nice kid, right? And it was at Blackpool. And he was a really nice kid and very talented. But what would happen is when he went into a trick, he would immediately change. His voice would change. His the way he spoke would change, and he'd tell these completely ridiculous stories that obviously weren't true, but he'd learnt the patter on whatever project that he'd actually learnt the trick from. So he genuinely said, right, when I was in Kathmandu 5 years ago, I bumped into the Sultan of Shakabar, and the Sultan of Shakabar, and I'm like, dude, you're 13 years old. Do a trick. And that's what I've tried to kind of install into my kids, Ryland and Thea, which is your kids. Do tricks that kids would do. Do tricks with Rubik's Cubes. Do tricks with Lego. Do tricks that kids would do. And that's something that Ryland does at school. So when he's at school with his friends and Thea as well, that if they're going to do a trick, they're going to do a trick with something they'd have on them as a kid at school, if that kind of makes sense. So how that relates to you is if you feel cheesy telling the patter, try to make it so that people cannot tell a discernible difference between when you end and the patter starts. So it doesn't come across as, yes, of course, I'll show you a trick. Right, let me perform this trick for you right now. Try to make it so it's coming across as you, and it's more conversational, if that makes sense. That's all I try to do. When I perform, I try, my performer mode is exactly the same mode as if you saw me in real life, just chatting and talking. And that's really important, because when my approach to performing to groups professionally is not to immediately start performing, but just have a conversation with people. Last night I sort of talked about doing a gig last night. It was a big corporate, lots of tables, very, very busy. And I was walking up to the tables and I was like, hey, I heard this is the fun table. Is that right? Well, nice to meet you. My name's Craig. I'm the magician here. How you guys doing? You enjoying the food? Have you had a good night? You looking forward to the band? So what does this company do? I'm chatting, I'm talking, I'm getting people to like me. Go and read How to Win Friends and Influence People. Then you will learn how that if you get people to like you, then people will want to listen to you. It's as simple as that. But if you walk over to the table and go, oh, has anybody dropped this red penknife down here? No, what about this black penknife? I am the magician. Nice to meet you. My name's Craig, and I'm here to perform. Then, yes, you're going to come across as cheesy, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's all I can really say about that, yeah? Just think about, think about how to perform so you're not telling the patter like you put it. And instead, think about how to perform so you're coming across as you instead of somebody else. So, hopefully that helps. Okay, so the next question was Chili1000 says, hey Craig, I just watched your video about the 10 assumptions. In that video, you spoke about companies like Penguin Magic putting out thousands of products. So of course, a few will be weak. I totally love your work and I own all your stuff. This isn't coming from a bad place at all, but you've released a lot of tricks in the last few years. So I'm really curious, if you had to pick, what would your say or your top 3 worst tricks you've ever created? It's a very good question. Okay, so I kind of think of Craig. Here's me talking about myself in the third person. I kind of think of myself as as a creator. There were 2 distinct eras, if that kind of makes sense. There was the World Magic Shop Wizard product review era when I was creating magic back in the day. Then I left the community for a decade, and then I came back, and then there's this era that we're currently in right now. So 2 eras, right? If we're going on the era from all those years ago, obviously, I don't want to dwell on it, but the first one I'd say is red, because it's not even my trick. So red would be there. Pull Ball Miracles would be there. So I bought out a trick for World Magic Shop called Pull Ball Miracles, and I broke my own rule. And my rule when I'm creating is I'm never forced to create. So I don't force creativity. It comes naturally. And if I find something that I really jive with and something that I want to work on, then I will work on it, but it will not get forced. And I broke that rule. Jim Trainer, who owned World Magic Shop with David Penn back in the day, he bought a crap load of pool balls, and he turned around to me and he went, "Can you put together a trick using pool balls? Because I've just bought a ton of them." And so I was creating not for me, not for something that I was interested in, but I was creating because somebody had a thing and they wanted me to put a project together for it. Now, having said that, there are 1 or 2 good tricks on the Pool Ball Miracles, a couple that I actually still use to this day. However, there were about 20 tricks on that project, and 18 of them were trash. And the 2 that were on there could have been done as a download without actually getting the pool balls. So I'd say that Pool Ball Miracles was definitely there in that era. I'd say that red was there in that era. And there's right, okay, this is kind of a weird one, right? So I bought a trick out called Quarantine, and I love Quarantine. I love it so much. When I was entering competitions back in the day, all of the time, Quarantine was my closer in my competition act, and it's been my closer on and off for probably the last 25 years. I love Quarantine, but the way that we did it was terrible, for a couple of different reasons. One, it needed to be reinforced shrink wrap, and it wasn't, which meant that as a quality product, it wasn't as good, because it would break on people. And two, and more importantly, you weren't getting the handling I was using in competitions. You got another handling. They didn't want me to do the handling that I was doing in the real world. They wanted me to do a different handling. And for a variety of different reasons. And I was new to creating at the time. It was one of my first products, and I just went along with it, and I really wish I hadn't. So even though I love the trick, and I genuinely love the trick so much, and I did it last night. I love performing it. I'm not happy with how the product actually came across at all. So Quarantine, that'd be the three. So back in the day, you got Pool Ball Miracles, you got Quarantine, and you got Red. Fast forward to this era, I don't know. How do you say it? I like all of them. I really do. I'd say Playlist aged not great. So Playlist was one of the first tricks that I did coming back, and Playlist is good. It's good. It's based on these music download cards, which were a thing when I released Playlist, but they were dying off. Now, 5 years later, they're not really a thing at all, and because of that, it doesn't have the power that I wanted it to have. And also, there was a QR code revelation, and that QR code revelation was very, very cool. Back in the day, I had this idea of using this QR code as a multiple out, and nobody had done that before. But now with stuff like Decode, is it Decode? Yeah, Decode by David Jonathan. That's kind of superfluous to requirements, and that was one of the cool things of Playlist. So I don't think Playlist is as good now as it was when it first came out. So I'd say Playlist. There's a trick in the Netrix. So the Netrix has literally 1,000 tricks. There's so many tricks in the Netrix, and I'm uploading new ones all of the time. But there's a trick in the Netrix called the one-handed A-can, which I did for a while. Every trick that goes up on Netrix, every trick that gets released as a product, I've done it, right, for a period of time. And there's this one-handed A-can. And when I created it, I was so happy because I came up with an A-can, a way of doing an A-can with one hand. Now, when I look at it, I kind of think, but why? Just because you can do an A-can with one hand, what does it achieve? And there's some quite complicated moves in there. You've got to do some one-handed switches. You've got to do some one-handed deals. You've got to do some one-handed shuffles. You've got to do some one-handed tenkai palms. It's really, really complicated. And I'm like, there's a million different ways of doing this trick. So much easier than what I'm doing here right now. But I'm doing it with one hand because that's the premise. And, I try not to do that where, the premise... The premise of having a one-handed A-can is fine, but it shouldn't take away. There's cleaner ways to do an A-can, if that kind of makes sense. So there's that. So the one-handed A-can, I'd say, would definitely be in there. And is there something else? There's a trick that never made. So I bought out iStretch earlier this month, and I've been waiting for 4 years to bring out iStretch, and I always include extra content. And there's a trick that was going to be on iStretch that never made the day, and it was based on Jack Channing's continuous coin production using a silk. And using the AirPod gimmick, so you'd make lots of AirPods appear, and you'd eventually end up making the case appear, and then you'd make the stretched AirPod appear, and it was like a last minute addition to the project, and I included it in there. And Nemid, who edited the project together, he said, look, he rang me and he went, look, Craig, this just is not good. This just does not come across as good. And he sent me the footage, and I was like, damn, that comes across as terrible. It did not play in my head on camera how I wanted it to come across. And there was already so much stuff on iStretch. I was like, look, let's just pull it off the project. So a big shout out to Nemid for that one, because iStretch is great. I really love iStretch, and it would have been a black spot on that project if that trick had made that cut. So those are the three that I'd say from the current era, and three from the previous era. So hopefully that helps, and thanks for the question. Okay, so Yin How Magic says, hello again, Craig. Wonderful episode once again. Thank you. More than welcome, buddy. Question one. Right, two questions. Could you give us a tour of your warehouse or show us your magic storage area? It may make me feel better about the mess in my magic room. It's actually quite tidy at the moment. But yes, that's one of the things we're wanting to do over Christmas. So we're putting together the Christmas content at the moment. I've just put together the 10 worst tricks of 2025. And damn, I don't rant anymore, but I went into full-on comedy rant mode on that video. But we're currently putting the content together for the Christmas stuff. And one thing that I said to Michael I'd like to do is give everyone a tour of the warehouse, because it's a question that comes up over and over and over again. So yes, that is happening. So yeah. And two, you mentioned you and Nemid do filming for other people. What does that mean? Not sure you've explained this previously. Do you make trailers, film, edit, produce tutorials for other magic products? So, me and Nemid work together on projects an awful lot. You'll see that I appear on a lot of other projects. I get asked by magic companies to appear on a lot of other projects. Like every year you'll see me on a variety of different other people's projects. So Cube Mix from Alakazam and Risky Nanda, not my trick, I appeared on it. And put all the stuff together from it. Even trailers, like you look at the Poison 2 trailer at Alakazam, by Nicholas Mavresis, and Wayne Goodman is on the tutorial. It was me that was on the trailer, so I put the trailer together for that. You've got Nightmare Recharged again with Alakazam, not my trick, but I was on the trailer and the tutorial and so on and so forth. Capsize 2, Penguin Magic, there's a million different ones, right? So myself and Nemid are constantly filming, because a lot of the Alakazam stuff, because Alakazam are quite far away from me, they're in Kent and I'm in the Midlands, so they're like 4.5 hours away from me. So a lot of the time when I'm filming content for Alakazam, I will film it at this end. Nemid will film it because he's an amazing videographer. He'll film the tutorial, he'll film the performances, he'll go out and get live performances with me, and then he'll make the trailer and the tutorial and hand it over to Alakazam. He does that for TCC, he's done that for Trick Trick Boom, he's done that for Alakazam, he's done that for Murphy's, he's even done something for Penguin in the past. So he's somebody who does an awful lot of that stuff. I almost feel sometimes like he's my own personal videographer, even though he's worked on a lot of other projects as well. So that have nothing to do with me. But yeah, so that's effectively that's what I mean. So when we go out and film, we're filming projects. So at the moment I've got like 6 or 7 projects to film for Alakazam, and I've got a couple of projects to film for TCC as well. So, we're not doing anything over December because it's so busy. But come January, we're going to be going out and filming a ton of stuff for Alakazam and TCC, and I think there's some other stuff as well, but I can't remember. So that's what I mean by us going out. I do all of the talking on camera, but Nemid makes the trailers and films and edits and produces the tutorials, if that makes sense. David Blaine says you need to go out to the pub, bar, and have a buddy go with you and record live performances of the night, just performing to random people, good mics and a good camera. Well, that's what me and Nemid do when we go out and get live performances for various different projects, but we're out filming a particular thing. We're not out performing random stuff just for the sake of it. Now, maybe one day we will do that, but the problem is I have to pay Nemid every time we go out and do this sort of stuff. It's not like he goes and does it for free. So in order to go out and have Nemid follow me around for the night and film me and then hand me the content, it's going to cost me money. I'm going to have to pay the man. So it's something that I can do if enough people want to see that on the channel, but it's definitely not happening over December, maybe January. Okay, so David Blaine asks another question. Whatever happened to Chris Ballinger and Magic Geek? Did Penguin buy them out? Well, no, Penguin did not buy them out. They were actually bought by Vanishing Ink, lock stock. So everything was bought by Vanishing Ink. I think if you go to Magic Geek, it trips over to Vanishing Ink now. I'm not 100% sure, but Vanishing Ink definitely 100% bought all of the Magic Geek stuff. Now, Chris Ballinger went out of Magic for a while, and ended up with a YouTube channel that had nothing to do with magic. Just like one of those YouTube channels that's kind of very personality driven, and became very successful doing social media, but outside of that magic space. Now, the last time I saw him online, he was doing a magic trick, but he was kind of like saying to his audience on this channel that he runs, "Hey, I used to do magic a lot. Let me see if I can show you a trick." And he did a trick, and he did it really, really well. But for a long time, he dropped out of magic. Now, I don't know if Chris was ever a performer. I mean, obviously, he performed a lot of stuff on Magic Geek, and he did an amazing job with it. But I don't know if he was ever like a full-time, going out gigging all the time performer. But whether he was or not, he definitely he definitely stepped away from everything to do with magic for a period of time, and Vanishing Ink ended up with all of the Magic Geek stuff. So there you go. If you search him online, if you search him on YouTube and Facebook, you're going to see Chris Ballinger. You're going to see the stuff he does. He's on Facebook, he's on YouTube, he's everywhere. But yeah, he doesn't do magic anymore. Okay, so we've got another question here from Illusionist Ed Zeus, who says, "Hey, hello. Some time ago, you reviewed people's set lists. I'm making a new show. Maybe you can recommend something for it. The show is named In the Air, and it's a story about how I became a magician. I know it's cliche, but I've never told that story to my audiences. I'm planning to start with a comedian reading jokes from a newspaper, and then I appear, big headline by David Kaplan. Then I show the first trick that I learned. It's a Sven pad, but I guessed the word wrong because I was bad back then. Then I show my juggling skills because I became better. Next is the best card trick in the world. I'll present it that way, and it's A-Can by Assy Wind. Then I'll go into the audience and guess how many cards they cut to, mnemonica. I come back to the stage and do Leviosa by Jao Miranda. Then I invite a child on stage and do the real levitation, Sponta's 360. And here I need something to separate flying illusions. For now, I have Trick 46 by Steve Rowe. It's Alakazam's trick, similar to a banana bandana, but I don't do it with cards, but the idea is the same. Okay, so okay. Then you do an Ashrar levitation with a grown man. Toxic plus, and the number makes the word snow that was forced at the start with a Sven pad. I then do Snowstorm, and the snow starts falling from the ceiling, and I do a self-levitation. That's the ending. Sorry for such a long comment. It's hard to explain this in a few words. I'd love to hear anything that you recommend. Thanks so much. Have a great December, and I wish you find some time to rest between your shows. Okay, so let's break this down. What I love about what you've said there is the beginning comes to the end. So you've got the first of all, I love big headline as an opener. I'm a little bit one thing that you should be aware of is, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but you're saying that you're starting with a comedian reading jokes and then you're going into big headline. The problem with that is you've got to take that person on tour with you. So if you're booked to do a gig and that's your opener, you need to find somebody who's going to do that spot. And then you're relying on somebody else, which is always a bit of an issue. But big headline itself, I love that concept. That's great. But what I really love is using the Sven pad, getting the word wrong, and then it all comes full circle at the end with snow. I think that's a really smart move, my friend. I think that's very good. Then so you've got the Sven pad at the beginning with the snow, then you've got the snowstorm at the end. That's amazing. That's really good. The juggling I can't really comment on. So A-Can is great, and then you're going to do some mnemonica stuff, which makes sense, and then you're going to go back and do Leviosa. The thing I'm a little bit concerned is there seems to be a lot of levitations. So you've got Leviosa, you've got Sponta's 360, then you've got an Ashrar levitation, and then you're doing a self-levitation. That seems like a lot of levitations in one show. And also, I don't know the self-levitation that you're doing, but I can't imagine it's as strong as an Ashrar or it's as strong as a Sponta's 360. For those of you that don't know, Sponta's 360 is one of the goats when it comes to levitations. It's what I use to close my show an awful lot. And the Ashrar levitation is amazing. It's the one where you lie somebody down, you cover them up with a cloth. The cloth with the person under it rises up in the air, and in midair it vanishes, and the cloth comes fluttering down to the ground. Ashrar levitation is amazing. I can't see how you say that you're going to do a self-levitation at the end. I can't see how a self-levitation is going to be as strong as an Ashrar. I just can't see how that's the case. and there's a lot of levitations. There's so many other illusions that you can do. You seem to be relying a little bit too much on levitations, and I think you could be doing some other stuff in there as well. And I think that would vary it up a little bit, because when somebody's seen, start with the Leviosa. That makes sense. You got the levitation, then do the spontaneous levitation. If you want to do one more, do the Ashra. I think maybe you could get away with that, but I think you need to do slightly less revelations, honestly. In terms of the thing after Spontus, and you're doing trick 46, that's fine. And that's a good trick. Don't get me wrong. Steve Rose trick 46 is great. I've seen it. It's a very good trick. I'm not 100% sure about following. I'm not too sure. It's kind of a weird kind of, I'm going to do a levitation. Now I'm going to do a card trick. Now I'm going to do another levitation. If you were going to do two levitations separated by a trick, maybe do something that sets up the second levitation in there, because that's kind of, there's no rhyme or reason to do. There's no rhyme or reason to do, trick 46 and then go into Ashrar. I would use that moment there to really set up for the Ashrar. And then, in terms of the snowstorm, I love the idea of using snowstorm at the end. That's great. Although, I do love the idea of doing snowstorm, but I don't know about the self-levitation. Personally, I would close with the Ashrar. If you've got an Ashrar in your show, I'd close with that, and I'd do the snow just before the Ashrar, and I'd skip the self-levitation. And I'd look for a different illusion. I'd probably try and only do one levitation in the show, maybe two at the absolute most. That's just my opinion. You've got some great stuff in there. It's obviously a big show. It has to be for what you're doing. It's a very, very, very good show. I just think there's too many levitations there, to be honest. And I think that oh, there we go. Sorry about that. I think there's too many levitations there, and I think that you could potentially maybe put something else in to break up the levitations. But the structure of the show is great. So let me know how it goes, and good luck. Okay, so Punkala says, hi Craig, and good luck with the busiest month of the year. Thank you very much. How can one use a snap deal to switch a card? I can do the snap deal, but I don't understand how it can be used to switch cards. What's the best resource for learning this? I'll be honest, I don't do the snap deal. Never have done the snap deal. It's just not something that's ever appealed to me to learn. So it's not something I've ever done. Leonard Green would be the person that you would need to speak. You would need to research. Look at Leonard Green's stuff, especially the stuff that he put out early on in the day. I remember one of Leonard's competition pieces was he had a shuffled deck of cards, and he would deal them into two piles, and he'd be dealing them into red and black. So he'd be alternating dealing the cards. But what would happen is, as he was dealing the black cards, they were becoming red as he was dealing them on the red pile. And when he was dealing red cards on the black pile, they were becoming black. And the visual was incredible. I remember just watching that and being blown away. And I remember thinking, oh, that's a really clever... Because that made me almost learn the snap deal. And I was thinking that's a really clever application, because he's not just dealing, he's switching as well, which is really smart. But I ended up not learning it. But that, I think, is what you're looking for. Also, Ashley Goodwin does a lot of stuff with the snap deal, changing the cards. So if you go and look at Ashley Goodwin's stuff, she lectures quite a lot. I don't know what material she's got out for sale, but I have seen her lecture at various conventions. But she's great at the snap deal. And also, as well as being great at the snap deal, she puts lots of stuff online where she's taking four aces, for example, doing a snap deal, and they're turning into four completely different cards, or they're turning into coins or something like that. So maybe reach out to Ashley Goodwin and send her a message. She's very responsive, and she might be able to help you and tell you what resources that you need to use. But there you go. I can't really help you anymore. I don't do it. But if you already learnt the sleight, you're probably most of the way there. Okay, so Robert Labarsky says, Dear Craig, I'd like to know if your brilliant trick Game Changer is coming out in euros. Thanks for all the great things that you do for Magic. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much, Robert. So Game Change, the whole point of it is it can work with any currency. So you get a quarter with it. So you get three arcade tokens. You get the shell, and you get a quarter, because a quarter will work with it brilliantly. But in the UK, there's lots of people that are saying, hey, use a 10p, just make sure it's not a steel core 10p, it's an older 10p, and that'll work fine. So there's euro, it doesn't have to be exactly the same size as the arcade token. So there's going to be a euro that will fit inside the shell. I'm not really got any euros here with me, but I'll see if I can do some research into it for you. But honestly, the whole point is the arcade tokens are kind of generic and will work with any country, and then you can just apply the coin that you want to use to the actual shell. So like I say, a lot of people in the UK are using 10 pences, the non-steel core 10 pences. Obviously the guys in America are using quarters. We supply a quarter with it, and the reason we supply a quarter with it is because that way you've got everything you need to start performing it straight away. But I don't think you'll have a problem finding a coin from your country that you'll be able to use. Okay, so the next question is Divisham Magician, who says, when people put things on Bark or add to events, but don't specify the importance in the description, would you recommend telling them? For example, someone said they want an hour of magic. So I quoted, then they came back and said I meant an hour on stage, but that wasn't put in the description. I don't have a 1 hour stage show, so my credits got wasted. Once I quoted £450 for a gig, and someone said our budget was £150. In these cases, do you think we should be telling them for future reference? Make sure you put important things like this in the description, as otherwise you could have people waste their credits and money submitting a quote. It's not to get angry with them, but rather to help them find a good fit next time, to make sure we don't lose credits for info that wasn't specific. I don't think that that's a good idea, to be perfectly honest. You're using this as add to events and Bark, who are obviously online services where you pay for credits and then you use those credits to send quotes. But the same principle applies with anything, any sort of marketing spend. So, for example, if I put a PPC campaign out and I set a £2,000 a month limit, and somebody came in to my website through PPC because they'd seen my sponsored ad online, and I quote them and they come back and go, oh, our budget's nowhere near that, I think it would be quite offensive to go back to them and go, well, you should have told me what your budget is, because if you told me what your budget is, you wouldn't have wasted my time. Do you know what I mean? I think it just comes across as quite offensive, and it's the same when I had to event a Bart. Look, here's the thing. That's what marketing is all about. If, the marketing spend and marketing budgets are there for a reason. They're there because, not everybody is going to book. Not everyone is going to book. And I think you're just going to antagonize people if you quote them on, let's say you quote them on Bark, and you quote them and they come back to you and say, well, my budget was a lot less. And if you send them a message going, well, next time you put a quote online, next time you want some information, you should put what your budget is, because then you won't have me waste my credits that I've bought. I just think there's no way that you can put that across to somebody and not sound like a complete and total dick. I think you're gonna sound like a dick however you put it across. It's kind of like me walking into a shop and picking up a can of Coke, taking it to the till and going, I'd like to buy that, and they go, well, that's £1.50, and I go, well, I was only expecting 50p. It's just a can of Coke. Well, it's £1.50. Well, I don't want to pay £1.50. Okay, well, next time you come in, and then having the shop owner turn around to me and saying, well, next time that you come into my shop, you need to let me know how much you want to pay for a drink, because it's going to waste my time. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of, I just think you're going to come across as a bit of a dick. Yeah, I really do. And, you take your chances. Sometimes people don't know the difference, but they don't realize that they need to put stage or close up or whatever. And I guarantee you, even if you can come up with a nice way of saying it to people and not sounding like a dick, they're not going to remember that. They're not going to go, in a year, because people don't apply for magic all the time online. Let's say that they've hired a magician and it's not you because they wanted someone to do stage magic for an hour. The next time they need a magician in like 4 or 5 years' time, they're not going to remember the conversation that somebody who they didn't book had with them because they didn't put one specific piece of information down, which meant that that person had to waste credits in order to pitch themselves. Do you know what I mean? They're never going to remember that. They're not going to go, oh, we're going to hire a magician. But do you remember there was that magician that contacted us 5 years ago and said, specify stage or close-up? Let's make sure we do that time. They're just not going to do that. So I think, look, you take your chances. You win some, you lose some. Sometimes you get the gig. Sometimes you don't get the gig. Sometimes you're going to lose money. Sometimes you're going to make money. It's just part of the process. Okay, so the next question is from Andy Cooper, who says, hi, Craig. I've heard you talking about the benefits of using Plastidip for certain types of playing card gimmicks. My question is, once it's completely dry, does Plastidip leave a mild streaky surface, a bit like the back of a Post-it note? No, it doesn't. When it's completely dry, you cannot tell the difference between a card with Plastidip and a card without Plastidip. If you are seeing a Plastidip card with a mild streaky surface, it means that the person who has treated the card has not let it dry as long as they should have. So, yeah, leave it to dry is the biggest piece of advice I can give you. Secondly, can you apply it to just a small section of the card? Maybe using a template, and would this be sufficient to adhere to another card? Or do we need to apply to all the card surface? No, you can. There are tricks that I do, like look at Destiny Deal, where the card is Plastidipped, but only half of the card. I've got tricks that are unreleased where only a very small part of the card is Plastidipped. So no, you can create a template out of a card using a Stanley knife or some sort of knife, and you can create that template and you can Plastidip the card however you want to. That's absolutely not a problem, and that's a useful thing to do if you want the cards to separate easily. Thirdly, does Plastidip leave any residue on other cards it touches? I.e., would you end up with several cards being slightly sticky after performing the same routine a number of times? No, as long as you leave it to dry. The thing with Plastidip is you need it to dry longer than normal roughing fluid. I normally will Plastidip a card and then I will leave it to dry for at least a couple of hours. And the reason I do is because that way it's going to completely dry. When it's completely dry, it's not sticky at all and nothing will transfer onto another card. It just feels kind of slightly tacky, but it's not going to transfer onto the other card at all. The key thing is to leave it to dry and none of that will happen. So hopefully that helps. As I say, I am doing a video on Plastidip and Rough and Smooth at some point in the future on Magic TV, but for now, hopefully that answers all your questions. Okay, so the next question is from Justin Hutchins, who says, hi Craig, I've just received a Morgan Super triple coin from N2G, but it only comes with one routine and a shite tutorial. Yeah, that would be N2G for you. Can you point towards some resources where I can learn routines with this gaff? Well, it's a super triple coin. It's a split coin, essentially, but a triple split coin. You can look at all of my split coin stuff on Nightshade coin set. I've got some split coin routines on Absolute Madness, and I've got a lot of split coin routines on the Netrix. But there's not really many resources for split coins or super triple coins. It's something that I'm wanting to do on the Netrix. I'm wanting to have a section on N2G gimmicks because there are so many N2G gimmicks and their tutorials are terrible and but their actual coins are really good. So it is something I've been thinking of adding to the Netrix in 2026. But for now, I can't really tell you about many resources because there aren't that many resources outside of looking at stuff with a split coin. Okay, so Mystery Man 000 says, I know you're a very busy person. Thank you very much. There is a House of Magic owned by Mark D'Souza in Philadelphia. Many magicians perform and also lecture there. I'm going to see Diamond Jim Tyler in January. I was wondering if you would ever come back to Philadelphia in the future. I'd love to see you. I owe a lot to you for all the help you've given me and continue to do to make many other magicians. You the man, Craig. Thank you so much. I want to do more in the States. I have had so many people in so many states in America ask me to come and lecture, and it's something that I've never done. I've been back in the community now for 5 years, and I do an awful lot of lectures, but I've not really lectured in the US, and it's something that I want to spend more time working on, and something is happening next year. If everything goes as I plan it to go, if all the T's are crossed and all of the I's are dotted, there's something that's happening next year that hopefully will mean that I will be doing, I will have a lecture tour or something next year. So in America. So yeah, that's something I'd love to do. And I've been a big fan of Mark D'Souza for years. I love Philadelphia. I worked in a holiday park I worked in a summer camp in America in Pennsylvania. I would love to come back. I would be honored to go and perform at Mark D'Souza's venue. I absolutely would. And there was something on the cards many years ago with myself and David Penn, but it never came to fruition, unfortunately. But there is definitely, yes, 100% that's something I want to do next year. So, yeah, watch this space. Okay, so the next question is Mystery Man, who says, Craig, Game Changer is awesome. Thank you so much. But I wanted to know if the great people at Penguin would make an arcade coin in a magnetic locking version maybe sometime in the future, if that's possible. Have you heard any talks about that? I have said the same thing to Penguin. I know they're doing an awful lot with gimmicks at the moment. They are making a lot of gimmicked coins, and they're making them right there in Columbus, Ohio. So I do believe that there are going to be lots of other gimmicked coins coming out of Penguin. And I think that as Arcade Coin was so popular and Game Changer was so popular, it just makes sense for them to make other gaffs using those arcade tokens, because there's already a lot of people using them for other routines. So I would say, yes, watch this space. I think it could definitely happen. And I know of one or two coin projects that Penguin are bringing out over the course of the next few months, and they are awesome. And as I say, they're all made in Columbus, Ohio. I'll mention it to them again. I think it's a really good idea. Obviously, I don't really have any pull at Penguin, but I'll mention it to them again. I think it's a really good idea. Okay, so the next question again is from Mystery Man, who says, wanted to know if you'd make a video on your magic room stroke collection of tricks. I'm sure it's massive. Wanted to see how you store and organize everything. As I said to the guy earlier on, yes, we are going to be doing a tour of the warehouse at some point over Christmas. And we're going to be showing everything to you in there, because that's a question that keeps coming up over and over again. So yes, look out for that. And yeah, it's pretty big. Okay, so the next question is from Mystery Man, who says, hey, Craig, I was wondering if you'd ever perform Little Hand by Michael Lamar or anything like that effect. There's a few on the market, Cat's Paw, Baby Hand, Mummy Hand. Which is your favourite? Yes, I have. No, I haven't. I haven't performed Little Hand at all. It's not something I've ever done, but I do appreciate it. I think it's very, very good. My favourite version of that is Frankendoe by Roddy McGee. So Frankendoe actually takes that Little Hand gimmick and makes an effect out of it. So effectively, the whole idea is you've got this Play-Doh and you roll it up into a little ball, and then what happens is you borrow a coin, you have the coin signed, and you put the Play-Doh in your hand, and the idea is that a little Play-Doh type hand comes out and pulls the coin into your hand, and then when you open up your hand, it's inside the Play-Doh, which I think is absolutely the best way of using that effect. So Frankendoe by Penguin Magic and Roddy McGee is the best use, as far as I'm concerned, of the Little Hand gimmick. Okay, so the next question is the Magic of Sharon Springs, who says, hi, Craig, I've actually got 2 questions this week for you. I was curious if you had any suggestions on creating a successful street act. And if I'm remembering correctly, you brought up an app in the past for running music during a show. I believe it was called Solo. Could you explain more about that app? So I did a full interview with the creator of Solo, and he went through in detail exactly how it works. That man's name is Sam Fitton, and if you go onto YouTube and you type in Sam Fitton, Talk Magic, Magic TV, you're going to see that interview. My advice would go and watch that interview, because the first part is who he is and where he came from, but the second part, we talk all about Solo and how great it is. So rather than me explaining it third hand, I would suggest that you go and watch that video. Solo is absolutely amazing. And if you're a solo performer and you want to actually control the music yourself completely, solo is the best way of doing that. In terms of suggestions on creating a successful street act, you have to remember I've never really done street magic, really. And so it's not something I can really talk on in any degree of skill. However, what I'm doing next year is I'm doing an interview, not an interview, but I'm doing a video which is going to be made up of several interviews with street performers giving their advice on how to perform on the street. Because this question you've asked, you're not the first person to ask that question. So I'm going to actually put a video together with advice. The other thing I'm thinking of doing is doing an almost like a match-and-metry type thing where we do a documentary series next year on how to put together a street act. But it's going to be with maybe Ryland or Thea or myself or something like that, and go through the process of creating a street act from the beginning, learning it all, and you see the process of putting the act together, going out, taking it to the streets, seeing how much money we get from doing it. I think that'd be an interesting concept as well. So that's something I'm thinking about doing next year. But in terms of any advice, go buy Tales from the Streets by Cosmo. Cosmo is one of the best street entertainers in the world as far as I'm concerned, and there's a DVD he brought out years ago called Tales from the Streets, which is absolutely amazing. Okay, so the next question is from Anthony Povey, who says, "Hi, Craig. I know you've been asked a few times about adding your ideas and routines to the Extractor project. Did you manage to do this when you visited Alakazam HQ? I've asked Alakazam, but I've had no reply yet." I haven't actually got to Alakazam HQ yet. I haven't actually been this year, believe it or not. I am planning on going early next year because I've got a ton of stuff to film, but a lot of the stuff that I've been filming for Alakazam has been off-site. So what I might do is I'm either going to film it when I get to Alakazam next year, or me and Nemid are filming at the beginning of January. I'll speak to Pete Nardi and I can film it maybe in that set and send it over to Pete. But either way, it's coming. It's just, there's been so much other stuff that's happened over the course of the year that I've had to prioritize for Alakazam and for other production companies. That's kind of been pushed by the wayside a little bit. But the routines are done. Everything's written. I just need to get around filming it. Okay, so Logan HB says, in the upcoming Game Changer video, could I talk about how to combine it with the arcade coin from Penguin Magic? Absolutely, 1,000,000%. That is something that I'll be doing. Because one of the beautiful things about Game Changer is you can very, very easily combine it with arcade coin. And when you combine the two of them, my God, the opportunities, the concepts, the ideas are just literally mind-boggling. So yes, when I do the video, the kind of the hows and whys thing, and I kind of go really deep into it, I will definitely also talk about Game Changer and Arcade Token and how you can combine the two together. Okay, so Sean Coleman says, "Hi Craig, how are you this week?" I'm very well. How are you, my friend? My question this week is, my wife had asked what I would like for Christmas, and I'd like a good Peak wallet, but I don't own one. I know you love the Orphic wallet. Unfortunately, they're now all sold out, so what would you recommend as the next best wallet I should ask for? Well, okay, so you can't go wrong with the Stealth Assassin. The OG from Alakazam and Peter Nardi is still one of the best Peak wallets of all time, and I know it's the one that Nemid actually uses. So the Stealth Assassin is great. I've just been playing around with this, and this is Ryland's favorite Peak device now. It's called EDC Tag by TCC. It is really, really good. It's a great Peak device. It works really, really well. It works better than I thought it would do when I took it out of the case. So EDC Tag is quite a nice thing. It's not a wallet, but it's based on a key fob, and the method behind it is actually very, very clever. But if you're wanting specifically a wallet, the one that I think is probably the best wallet at the moment is the Materializer wallet from Penguin Magic. Even though you can do a lot more with it than just use it as a Peak, the peak functionality with it is brilliant, because you can literally take a wallet, you can hand it to them, they can put their card away in the wallet, you can zip it up, there's no way you can see in it, they can see it from all sides, and at any point you want to, you can literally just see that peak clear as day. It's brilliant. It is absolutely brilliant. And then you can do a bunch of other stuff with the same wallet as well. So I would say the Materializer wallet, but if you're wanting kind of more traditional peak wallet, I would say that the way to go with that would be the Stealth Assassin. So there you go. Hope that helps. And thanks for asking. Okay, Adonis Beraton says, following on about my question about the Vegas style show, yes, I think the interview would be great. And if you can also expand on the theatre show. Yes, okay, so I'll put that together after Christmas. If you're wanting me to speak to Alex Jesson about this, he is very busy over December. I am very busy over December. But we'll do a video together talking about that, because I think that Alex would be the perfect person to do that with. So yes, 1,000,000%. Leave it with me and I'll get to it. Okay, BK Magic says, hi Craig, great stuff on your channel, thank you very much. I want to learn coin magic. What would be a good trick to start on coin magic? My favourite way to start coin magic, to teach people coin magic, is to teach them Gadabout coins from Bobo's Modern Coin Magic, because it teaches you quite a few fundamental sleights. It teaches you how to finger palm. It teaches you how to do a vanish. It teaches you how to do a utility switch. It teaches you how to do a multiple click pass. But it's all quite an easy routine. It's quite well structured, and it teaches you so much about learning coin magic. And also, there's nothing in there that's too hard, so you're not needing to classic palm or anything. Now, there's a couple of different resources I can point you towards. First of all, my first Alakazam Coin Magic Academy was designed for beginners. And what's the first trick I teach? Gadabout coins. So the Alakazam Coin Magic Academy #1 is a great way to go with that. Also, the Netrix, I think, is like the ultimate resource when it comes to learning coin magic, because on the sleight, I've got a sleight section with every single coin sleight you can possibly imagine, and I've got difficulty ratings on all of the tricks that are actually on the Netrix, from beginner all the way through to advanced. So you can go into the beginner section and learn all the beginner tricks, and when you learn a trick, when there's a sleight, there's a link that takes you to that sleight in the Netrix, so you can learn that specific sleight. So you're not learning sleights just for the sake of it, you're learning them for the routines that you're interested in. So the Netrix is fantastic, thenetrix.com. Just go in at the bronze level, that's all you'll need. And the Alakazam Coin Magic Academy is also really good. If you want a recommendation that's not mine, the Metal series by Eric Jones and Illusionist, and go to My Magic by Mia Yedid, and go and check out the New York Coin Guys Symposium. And you'll see a ton of magic on there. But both, Metal is probably very beginner friendly as well. The New York guys, this really needs more of a, you need to spend some time. You need to be a little bit more advanced, but it's incredible material. Okay, so Manuel Vladez says, what about the Gaffed card project? Well, if you've been listening to the Magic Podcast, which is back, by the way, every Wednesday on YouTube, Spotify, and your favourite podcasting platform, you'll know that me and Lloyd talked about this last week. They're sent to the USPCC. They're sent. They're done. They're over there. They will be in the warehouse hopefully around about January, at which point me and Lloyd need to film the tutorial. It took us 5 years to get to the point where we're happy with this deck. We are now happy with this deck. We have to be. It's printed. So now the next step is we do the tutorial. It is definitely going to happen in 2026. I know we've been saying that every year, but we've just spent so long tinkering with the deck, tinkering against every single card. We wanted to make it perfect, and now we feel like it's perfect. So 2026, I'd probably say the first 6 months of the year, you're going to see the Gaffed card project. Okay, so the final question today is from Ollie Marsden, who says, Kevin Owens, lol, I see Bron Breakker winning the Rumble. Well, you know what? After the Survivor Series and War Games, where he got the pin and won for his team, and then cut that incredible promo the next night on Raw, I'm beginning to think that you might be right. I could see them building to Bron Breakker versus CM Punk, and I think if they did at WrestleMania, it would blow the roof off the building. I think they've got a bona fide star in Bron Breakker, and I think that if they handle it right, that we could have the next Roman Reigns on our hands. So yeah, Kevin Owens definitely is in with a shot if he's healthy, but if not, you're right. You're 100% right, Bron Breakker. So there you go, guys. That is another Q&A in the bag. Thank you once again for joining me right here on Magic TV. I really appreciate you spending the time with me, and I hope you enjoyed the Q&A. Now, don't forget, you want to see more videos like this, like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment down below. Also, don't forget that if you hang around this evening, you are going to see a review show special. And the review show special is on Discards and Ape, two incredibly awesome tricks that have just come out from the Trick Boom. And, go look at the interview I did yesterday on Talk Magic. I put an amazing interview up. Make sure you look out for that. I will see you again right here. Remember to join the Netrix. The Netrix is my online streaming platform for magicians. You can go and access that immediately. And I will see you again soon. Sorry I'm not in the studio. I will be back in the studio for next week. I'll see you again. My name's Craig, and this is Magic TV.